Hello, everybody. Thanks for coming back for another episode of That Early Childhood Nerd. We're all smiling at each other because the little recording notification on Zoom always surprises me. So I think I made a face. And by we are all smiling, I mean Mike Huber.
Hello.
And Sam Balch.
Hello.
And Carol Garboden Murray.
Hello.
Yay. So we're going to talk about an article that Carol has coming out in exchange. By the time the episode comes out, the magazine will probably be out, right? Because it's January, February. And it's about professional love. And before I do the quote, I wanted to just ask you, Carol, to sort of define the term for us before we get started so the listeners know what we're talking about by professional love.
Yeah, someone told me about this Dr. Page in the UK who was doing research on professional love, is what she called it. Mm-hmm. And she is just studying this unique intimacy that is a part of caring for young children. These complex feelings of love that go hand in hand with care, and specifically for those of us who care for babies and toddlers and preschoolers. I mean, I think you can love any age person, but she's really looking at this intimate work that we do. And how do we talk about this love, this relationship?
And like all your work on care, it's like when I read this, I was like, this is what I couldn't articulate before. So thank you for that. Oh no. Ooh, are you all back?
We're here. You
Okay.
were slightly frozen, but we're here.
Okay, my screen.
I felt that too.
My screen went way black.
Can you hear me?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, I felt that too, that I couldn't articulate it, and I had a essay in my book about love, and I took it out. I was afraid to talk. I was afraid. So when I found her, I was like, oh, good.
There's somebody else. Yeah. Okay. So it's sort of a longish quote because I couldn't find one that just was like quick and easy. But I think this will set us off for our conversation. So Carol, you wrote, since our society has traditionally held a narrow view of love as a feminine quality and has linked love of children with maternal instincts, it's been difficult to name love as a professional educational value. And then later at the end of that paragraph, you say, what we experience when we build authentic, secure relationships with children is a deep knowing and a serious, messy, joyful, challenging sort of grappling with the complex issues of human care. There you go. That was great. Thanks. So I guess what we're sort of going to dive into is this idea that I've certainly experienced in my career of, that some of us have heard messages of becoming too attached or not having boundaries. And it all comes down to this idea of professional love, I think, is what those, I've been accused of favoritism and reprimanded by supervisors for that kind of thing. So that's where my mind first went when I was reading this. And then I just thought about all the times I've told children in my care that I love them. and the various reactions. So I also today tried to look for a good definition of professionalism specific to early childhood, and I didn't really find one that satisfied me, but I thought maybe that was a place to start with talking about what that professionalism means, and then how we can make the case for professional love being okay to fit in there. If you guys have definitions or ideas or of how we could define professionalism.
I mean, I'm worried to start that conversation because, as you know, Heather, when I start talking, I inevitably end up talking about how capitalism has sort of ruined all of this stuff.
Sure, yes.
And I feel like my first reaction is that if we try to define professionalism in early childhood, we're going to get bogged down in a lot of language that is really about making money, that pertains to professions that make money or increase capital for someone else, and that aren't necessarily rooted in connecting with human beings, which would be the purpose of this work.
Now we
But
have
could
to.
we define it? Oh, sorry.
No, go ahead, Mike. Go ahead.
No, keep
I was
going.
saying, but could we define it though, thinking about the self-care of the childcare providers, right?
Oh.
That what I worry about is people who like won't go on vacation. You know, the teachers who
Yeah.
won't take a vacation because they love the kids, and it's
Ah.
that you can love them, and taking care of yourself is one of the ways that you can, you know, be more
Sure.
present
Sure.
when you are loving them. But that people sometimes can take themselves out of it. And I think that's important. And that's the one part where I feel like the professional boundaries are important.
Sure.
I love the kids,
Yep.
but yesterday when, you know, a parent showed up 15 minutes late and I knew I had to, you know, that's my whole, you know, day is, or my evening is changed now. It was still like, no, I love your child. And at 5 o'clock, I hand them to
I
you.
want to go home to the
Yeah.
other children I love.
Yeah, right. I
Yeah.
have to pick up my own child.
Well, I think that sort of factors or fits somehow the idea that there are those who think love can't be professional because love should just come naturally, and particularly for women, they should just be willing to love children and care for children. And we feel like maybe that's sort of what's devalued things like early, 70s feminism. You had to be anti-woman, anti-feminine to be
Mhm.
thought of as a feminist, and you had to embrace things that were seen as more masculine to be seen as a feminist.
Right. Which in and of itself is holding up this incorrect patriarchal toxic masculinity that men, like, for men, love is like transactional and it doesn't come naturally to them and they have to work at it and they're not the nurturing kind, and that is patently untrue and harmful.
Yeah.
I'm not a man. Maybe I shouldn't be talking. I feel like this is now like woman-splaining.
Sure.
When there's a man here.
just say some of your best friends are men, and then
Some of
and
my-
I was
Some
gonna,
of
I was
my
gonna make the
best friends are
opposite
men.
point when I was talking about people, the professionalism of people needing to take care of themselves. I was going to sort of, you know, I guess mansplain, saying like women are often the ones who are expected to, well, you know, just like the pandemic, who took care of the kids when someone had to stay home.
Absolutely.
yeah.
And I think the field is the same way. Like, well, you don't need to get paid that much because you get to be with children. And, you know, yes, you have vacation time, but do you have to take it now? Because,
Yeah.
you know, and so it's like we keep putting things onto people in this field. And I think it's because it's women. I think if it was mostly men, no one would ever think
Sure.
to do that.
Sure. We got to let
So-
Carol jump in here because she's
No,
the
I'm loving
quieter
everything
one.
you're saying, but I do think that is that love is part of why it's a, you know, sometimes not considered professional, right? Something that comes naturally, something you do from altruistic motives. You really shouldn't want money. You shouldn't want vacation. And some people have even argued if we give more money to early childhood educators, it would not be good for the field because we want people to do this because they love children.
I would love to meet those people. I would love to know what jobs they have.
Yeah.
But I
Yeah.
think also if we're defining professionalism, we could go to the other side and say, okay, maybe there's this generic idea of what it means to be a professional. Maybe you're dressed well. Maybe you're, you know, acting in a certain manner that is you have your boundaries in place, and you, whatever that definition might be.
You've got your tattoos covered.
Yeah, you got your tattoo covered. You're sitting in a chair properly.
Yes.
You have you're taking documentation.
Yes.
Whatever ideas we have about being professional, it might not be sitting on the floor with a little child who's slobbering on you.
Mhm.
But those ideas of professionalism are actually not professional, right? In our field, those are not professional
Mhm.
Right.
notions. So how do we make it normal to be holding a child, to be caring for a child, to be changing a diaper, to be laughing and cuddling and giggling and getting eye contact
Mhm.
and connecting? That is professional. In our
Yeah.
field, those are those unique, intimate acts are what defines the profession. And in
Yeah.
order to really engage in those ways, we tend to fall in love with people when
Yeah.
we're that close to
Yeah.
them.
Yeah. There's another great quote. How can we spend hour after hour, day after day, week after week, changing diapers, feeding them lunch, rocking them to sleep without falling in love with them? Which was really spoke to me.
When I read that part, Heather and Carol and Mike, when I read that part, like the first thing that like popped into my head was like, of course I'm gonna fall in love with these kids, and I don't want to be part of a profession where I'm not supposed to. I don't want to be part of a world where I'm not supposed to fall in love with the people that I am caring for and learning with.
Right.
I want that. I want that for everybody in this field. I want you to love the people you're spending so much of your time and energy and heart and soul with.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I think for me, a definition of professionalism has always been, for myself, understanding what the work really is and then doing that work. So like understanding what children need and understanding how we can support them is far more important to me than, as many have heard me say, whether you have tattoos or piercings, but also, whether you hit dress code every day or whether you're sometimes sitting down instead of standing up and being busy, or many other things that I've seen staff be sort of reprimanded for over the years. And then in that definition, this idea of professional love falls right into it, because we know so much about attachment and the importance of physical touch to development and relationships, and how that can impact every child, but also the trauma, the children who have had the trauma that we need to acknowledge. So I feel like it's, taking our expertise and applying it to the work, and that's professionalism.
Exactly. And maybe what we've done in our profession, even when we've been doing the work quite well, maybe what we've done is we've been afraid to talk about the love. We go to the brain development, right?
Mm-hmm.
So we go to the brain development, and we love this. Like, I'm actually really sick of the brain development talk. It's just, I'm fed up with it. I don't want to hear about neurons and proving that. But that's where we go: brain development and literacy. And if you got the book open and you're reading the story to the 3-month-old infant, then you must be professional. It's like this attachment to academia, categories of math, science, reasoning. And even though we might be doing the work really well and loving the kids and caring for the kids and holding the kids, we've still been afraid to talk about the heart and the body, the heart and the body. The brain is kind of where we've gotten stuck when we try to prove that we're professionals.
Yeah. Well, and go Mike.
I was, I'm gonna fanboy here a little bit, but so Anji play, Ms. Chang, the 5 principles of Anji play are love, risk, joy, engagement, and reflection. And she defines love as the experience of being trusted, heard, seen, and respected. And I just, thought it's a really nice way to look at it. And whatever the Anji play folks can talk to you about brain development too, but they usually don't. Because they're much more interested in love and joy.
And Carol, when you were talking about sort of that hesitation or that fear to bring up love and how we tend to go to brain development, I'm just thinking about how in many of my experiences, even talking about like the love and the caring relationship has always been in the context of how it's going to make the child smarter, how it's going to make the child a more successful student. It's never about the fact that we're human beings built to love each other. It's about, it's going to make them better. They're going to feel more secure. So they're going to want to come to school. So they're going to learn the math and the reading.
Okay, sure. But like, all those things are true, Sam.
Yeah, they are. Yeah. And that's great. But don't we also just want to love because we're built to do that? Because we're connected to these people, and of course we want to share with them.
Yes,
love them to love them.
If you have to prove that loving them is going to make them smarter, loving them is going to, it falls back into that category of the capitalism, right? It's like the commodification of children.
Exactly. We've made it has to have this other purpose outside of just this beautiful sacred thing.
Just the fact that children in our care, in our programs, deserve it because they're human and they're children and we're there with them. I think that gets lost a lot. But so I don't want to get hung up on the brain development thing, but what I was talking about that I didn't, I guess, make clear is that this is sort of another example, and your care work too, Carol, has been this way for me, where I feel like what we know now about how brains work and what's good for a developing brain and what's not so good for a developing brain validates all of the instinctual kinds of stuff that we've been doing before we had this information available.
I was going to say, so as the man, can I just like say that, because nobody else can say this part, when all that brain development,
say it in a lady voice.
When all that brain stuff was coming out, you know, all the research, I remember making a comment to someone of like, oh, so basically what this Time magazine issue is about is a bunch of men have discovered that what women have been doing for 10,000 years is okay.
Yes.
You know, because it's like so obvious, and yet there's this, you know, I'll say patriarchy, like has this thing, well, we want this evidence-based, like that word evidence-based term gets used all the time and it means nothing, because it's like, well, what evidence are you looking for?
Yeah, they're looking for evidence
that kids being loved.
Yeah. Okay. They're looking for evidence that white men think are evidence enough. Like, that a bunch of dead white dudes decided this is what evidence looks like and this is how you get it.
They're not
as
all
opposed
dead.
to listening. Not a lot. That's true. Some of them are still living. As opposed to just listening to women who have been doing this for a long time.
Yeah.
Something that I was really thinking about as I was reading through the article, which obviously I loved, was I'm just wondering, like, how, I don't know, hundreds of years ago, right? When children were cared for in more of a collective situation, how harmed has this idea of professional love and how much of our hesitancy and fear about talking about loving children that are in our childcare centers and programs, how much of that has come from the messaging that parents and families have been being given for especially the past 50 years, but you know, the past 100 years, that the nuclear family is the core of it, right? And that it's the parents that raise the children. It is the parents' responsibility. Everything they do falls on them. And it really falls on the mother, and the mother needs to love these kids the most. And, you know, you've still got messaging about how mothers who choose to send their kids to childcare are doing this terrible, evil thing. Yeah. Because why is someone else raising your children? Yeah. So I feel like there's almost this competition that, well, the childcare provider can't love my kid. I need to love my kid. And if the childcare provider loves my kid, they're stepping into who's actually raising the kids. When we're not supposed to be like that. We're working in tandem with the parents to raise the children. Like it's not, this is not an all or nothing game, but we've made it that way. As I'm speaking from a especially American perspective, but that's how it's become.
Yeah, I've always like, when I had the babies and the toddlers, there were certain parents who, when they first came to the center and they were interviewing, and they kind of treated me with, I don't know, it was a certain disdain, and I didn't quite understand it. It was like, it was the guilt of having to give the baby over. And do you have your CPA, your first aid and CPR, that ask these silly questions, or do you lock the door, and do you have a swipe card, and all this security, and you could just feel the anxiety. And I think that, you know, that is so true about the parents' guilt about leaving their child. And then when that relationship is formed between the parent and the caregiver, how that myth is just so dissolved, because every parent just, my experience, sometimes when the new mom is handing over that baby, there's this weird, almost competitive feeling and guilt and all these layers of stuff that I think it's really the messages we've gotten from society that you're not a good parent if you're leaving your child at daycare, and I'm going to raise my kid, I'm not going to have someone else raise my kid, and blah blah blah, all these statements we hear.
Yeah.
But I do think that is a myth that we've been fed, because as soon as someone else loves your kid with you, it's there's no competition, right?
Right.
It's
You're just doubling it. It's not
Oh
like
my
it's being
God,
split in
yeah.
half.
Yeah.
You're doubling the amount of love that was there before.
Right. It's the best feeling in the world. I think my kids now that are, grown, and I know that the other women and men that loved them, I can't even, I could cry thinking about those other people that loved my kids with me,
Yeah. And I don't know
Well,
if it's because I worked in childcare before I was a parent and then brought my children to the childcares where I was working, but I expected them to fall in love with my kids. I was like, I am handing you the greatest baby and you're going to love this.
Yes.
Yeah,
And I never understood, and you're welcome. And I never understood when it didn't work out that way.
Isn't that amazing?
And it's an idea like love being like a pie, and there's only so many slices versus people that you can keep relighting. And I feel like I might be mansplaining because I can't remember the exact.
I give you
metaphor,
permission not to apologize for mansplaining for the rest of the episode.
But Carol's the Illuminating Care book, the lanterns idea, I think I can't remember if this part was in your metaphor, but you can always add, with candles, with lanterns, you can light more lanterns with it. It doesn't decrease what you have. It just keeps increasing. And I think that's the thing that our society right now, like if you look in a culture where they're used to handing the baby off to the aunts and uncles and grandparents and the family friends they call family, but according to Western culture, they're only friends or distant relations. But I think there's more of that idea that, of course, you would hand the child off to other people, and that's what you were saying, Sam.
Yeah, it is very cultural. I think for my experience is the United States. I've never lived anywhere else, but we do pride ourselves on being individuals, and that individualism instead of the collective kind of idea does, I think, impact or feed a fear of talking about recognizing professional love as something that is to be desired and expected.
Yeah, I just sort of little side anecdote. Being a teacher in Hawaii has been amazing for so many reasons, but the school I'm at right now, so community care is massive in Hawaiian culture, especially pre-white people. But even now that the Kingdom of Hawaii was overthrown and the Hawaiian people are still here, it's still practiced, right? Community care, and children, especially having so many aunties and uncles and people that care for them. And to have children just automatically, the majority of the time they call me my name, they call me Sam, but sometimes they will just automatically refer to me as auntie. And they'll say, auntie, can I go get that? And it does
I would love that.
to you. Like it makes you feel a different way. I don't really know how to describe it. It's just, like, of course, like, wow, it has really highlighted the tenderness of the relationship that children and teachers have, to have them just refer to me as auntie and then, just go about our day. It reminds me, this is such a collective thing. This is a family, regardless of where we live, but the fact that we all come together and care for you, we are part of what you're viewing as your family experience. And that is just so special. And I wish that for everybody.
Wonderful. And I love that. I think the first time I ever heard anyone talk about it was Ron Lally, who is no longer with us.
Yeah.
And I think about him a lot, but he was talking about that, the understanding attachment, and then having that responsibility to help the child hold on to their mom and dad, or their, whoever their primary caregiver is, help them hold on to that other all day. And having special training around separation and goodbye and return. And I don't know, that's really changed the way I talk to children in my care, the way I think about transitional objects, the way I think about rest time, this privilege we have to help the child hold on to their beloved family member while they're with us. And then it is that triangle, which is just really, it's really something when you have that trust with the family. Even sometimes it's not, the family doesn't know how much work you've done supporting that bond, and helping the child think about their family and all these different points of the day when the child opens their lunch and, wow, I wonder who cut your sandwich in that shape today. And someone at home really loves you. I wonder what they're having for lunch. I don't know. I just love thinking about how we can support that attachment and that identity that you are loved by someone.
Yeah. I think it's certainly possible that someone working in an early childhood program could have an unhealthy sort of attachment to a child that
Totally.
that would be inappropriate. And I think that's different than what we're talking about here.
Right.
But I think, sure, that's a possibility too. And what you're talking about is centering the family whenever we can, even though they're with us and the family's not right there, we're still supporting that attachment and acknowledging our role.
And I'm thinking of a past episode, which while we're recording this, it came out this week. But when we think of children with special needs, too often teachers, educators, professionals, quote unquote, go with is we need to fix this child or get them to at least behave like the typical kids, whatever, and not leading with love, and that's, and I find often I'm sort of reminding teachers, like, this child does play differently. They do perceive things differently than the other kids in your class. And I think after reading this article, honestly, because I just read it yesterday, I might try to use that language of, well, let's first figure out how to love this child.
Yeah. Oh, that's great.
And how do you
I love that.
Yeah.
That's,
because when I think about what I do, that's basically what I'm doing. Because they wonder when I come in, the kid's getting all excited and things. It's like, well, the child, I was telling stories in the other podcast, but he comes over to me, hugs me. And then I started working in there several hours a day. And the first few days for nap time, he sat in my lap. Kid's like 50 pounds, but like a baby, cradled in my arms. I had to sit on the floor and still could barely hold his weight, but did it for a few days. And then eventually he kind of went on his cot, and he's like 4.5 and he's a bigger kid, but that was his need, was still that. And now it's kind of like him and I can communicate non-verbally. I mean, he has some language, but not much. But it was the love first, right? That's what I started with. Like, I'm not going to tell you how to work with this child. I'm going to connect with this child, I guess, first. Yeah, and I didn't use the word love, but I want to rethink that one.
I've worked with so many teachers who would have been like, "Oh, Mike comes in and he just babies them and he just does whatever he wants."
Oh, I'm sure they do.
Then he leaves and we got to get him on his cot. But I think that's amazing, Mike. Good for you, and good for that little guy. So is this a good?
I have the meeting with him next week to explain what I've been doing in the room. So yeah,
that'll be fun.
So now I'm going to use the word love.
There you go.
Thank you.
Is it time to talk about the difference between boundaries and detachment and how that fits into professional love? That's a question that you pose in the article, Carol.
Yeah, I'd love to hear what people think.
Oh, I was wanting to hear what you thought.
How about Sam?
But Mike and Sam are okay too.
We're about. I think when I read that question, I thought all of the questions were really great, like reflective questions to think about. But that's the one I spent a lot of time on. Was really that popped out to me. I was like, oh, what is the difference between boundaries and detachment? And I think, like, I think right now, at least in like my generation, age group, I don't know what you want to call it. This idea of setting boundaries is like almost a buzzword right now. Yeah. Like everybody I know refers to things as boundaries, like blocking people on Instagram.
Yes.
I'm setting boundaries. I'm like, okay, cool. Protect your space, I guess.
Yeah.
So I feel like in some ways we've kind of it's got a little lost in the sauce about what we mean with setting boundaries. And I think that there are healthy boundaries for sure. And I think that there are some people who say they're setting boundaries, but really engaging in detachment for whatever reason. And I think a lot of times we might have people engaging in more like detachment style behaviors for like self-preservation reasons. Because, you know, of whatever might have happened in their life, they might be trying to avoid it happening again, or, you know, just trying to protect themselves. So learning to set boundaries with regards to professional love, I think, is a very tricky thing. I'm the kind of person that just loves all the time. Like, I just willy-nilly, I love these children. I love the people I work with. Like, I tell these people all the time. And I think there are other people that are thinking of, you know, telling the children you love them, like, oh no, that's a boundary. I'll say that I appreciate them. I'll say thank you. I will be kind to them, but like to tell them I love them, that's for me, that's too much. And I think I would view that as a little more detached, but that's my like own experiences speaking. And instead I'd want to talk to that staff member or person more to kind of understand it. Like I worry about me passing judgment on what is detachment just because of who I am.
I want to just respond quickly on that idea of telling the children that you love them. Because I think there's a gender thing here that one thing about being a man in early childhood is every single male I know in this field gets investigated at least once. Right. That's just part of being in this field. And so because the kids always tell me they love me. And I feel like that, like in those bad sitcoms, that like where I say, oh, that's nice. So nice.
Great.
And I don't
thank you. I know that's what I used to
you.
say to a
But
high school boyfriend.
I really do worry what families would think, especially with my current role. I don't interact with the families as much because I'm the coach for the teachers. So the parents don't know me direct. I mean, some of them do, but usually certain kids. But, you know, I would be very wary of using the word with the child just because of past experiences. So
I
think it's easy to overuse it and just throw around, I love you.
That's such a good point, Mike. I was thinking about like your story about loving this kid, and this kid's on your lap and you're helping him regulate and rest, and this kid's attached to you. So I was thinking like love, the boundaries in love. And I was thinking that professional boundaries allow you to love the children because you have a boundary where you see the child as himself. You feel the separation between you and the child. If you didn't have a proper boundary, you could go either direction. You could think, I'm going to change that child. I'm going to fix that child. I'm going to decide what the goals are for that child. And then you could be like overbearing, overprotective. You could love him, but it would be almost a suffocating, you know, not a healthy love. But you have a professional boundary, so you can really see that child, and you can be like, I really appreciate that child. I see that child's strengths. I want that child to follow his own inner impulse when it comes to learning. And that child knows, that child has the awareness and the, you know, just the empathy to realize, wow, Mike really loves me and I can be myself around Mike. So that boundary allows that love to happen. So the boundary keeps you from falling into an unhealthy pattern of fixing and over caring. The boundary also keeps you from an unhealthy pattern of detaching, because the boundary, you know what I mean? So it's a funny thing. A true boundary is good for everyone, right? Because it really does let you see each other and respect each other. And that's how I think of a boundary for professional love, that
Mhm.
man, I really want the best for these children. I care for them. I mean, even my own kids, but it's not healthy for me to do everything for them. It's not
Right.
healthy for me to also, just be detached and judgmental. But
Mhm.
when I really have the boundary, I can see them.
Mhm.
So then I'm not falling, I'm not sliding down that continuum of fixing and being frustrated and directing. But it is, I guess, back to Angie play. That's love is respect,
Yeah.
right?
Mhm.
I'm much more likely, if a child tells me they love me, I might say I love you too. And it's different for me than it would be for you, Mike, as you were describing. But I'm much more likely to, in a moment of connection, say, I sure like you, Jackson.
Right.
And I feel like that is sort of, because also there's the other side where people throw it around and just, I love you, I love you, I love you, I love you.
And like it's smothering, and then, or it has kind of
Or
lost all its meaning.
inauthentic. Yeah.
Yeah. Or like, where there's like, we all love each other. We're all friends at
Right.
We're all
I
friends
try
at
to be very
childcare.
specific. I try
Yeah.
to be very specific too, of like, I really love how you whatever. I love the drawings you make for me. I love,
Mhm.
like those very specific things. I might even use the word love then. I guess I didn't even realize I do that, but I do.
Yeah.
But I love the thing you do, right?
Sure.
So I definitely, I get, because it can get very, if we just use the word, it can be just as empty as calling everyone friends.
Yeah.
Wait, don't hit our friends.
Yeah. I just did.
I hit my friends all the time, actually.
Right. Oh my goodness. What else?
I just want to say, though, the boundary thing, it seems to me from what I heard all of us say, it's more about that we always reflect on it, that it's going to be different for every single child, every single parent. The triangle relationship between parents or family and child and us. So it is going to vary each time. So always asking. Because for some families, it is, and it is weird. I used to teach in the neighborhood I lived in. So I would frequently have parents who I knew before they had kids. But it'd be like one or two kids, and the rest of the kids I didn't know until they joined my class. And so then it's that weird, I know the parent already. And it was that hard thing of where is the boundary here? Is it, I don't know.
And sometimes there's like the brokenhearted sort of love, right? Like you love a child and you have to recognize your boundaries. If the child is going to to an unhealthy situation, or you are leaving, so sometimes you do what you can do. You have your relationship. So again, you see the child and you see yourself and you see the separation and you see that the time you have together and the role that you have in that person's life has its place, and that sometimes we have to let go, and that boundary is protective. It's self-protective, because
I want to comment on that real quick, and unfortunately I can't in my head remember who this concept is, but I think it's circle of influence, I think is the term we would use. And it was that idea that when there's a family that is in crisis, what they want from us is to know that the child is in a place that is consistent, that they're cared for, that they're loved. And we aren't there to solve their food insecurity, their housing crisis. But if the parent knows that we are doing that part, then it's easier for them to focus on the other things. If they're worried about the guy they just left their child with, they can't do the other things. So, and that might be one of those boundaries, right? That I feel so bad for this family. Here's the thing I can do. I can love this child, while they're here. I think that's an important thing to think about too. That's one of the ways the boundary works.
Yeah. Time for last thoughts. Did we already do them? Did I already say that?
Did not
I
already
think I
say
interrupted
that.
you.
Okay.
what
Yeah,
I
I just
do.
think I
Okay.
think the only other part is just the difference. The other boundary issue is the difference between being a parent and being a teacher. There
Mhm.
is a difference, right? And so we can, yeah, there's lots to say about that, but we're not.
Yeah, that's a big one.
Yeah, but it's good to contemplate that and think about that. And
Yeah.
there's a lot of bias in our profession towards teachers who don't have kids of their own too. And
Yes.
always bothered me.
Yeah.
Hi.
Yeah, there's Sam.
Hello. Hello.
That's actually been a topic that I've been thinking about for the
Oh, man.
podcast for a while
I would love
now.
to. I would love
Okay.
to chat about it. I
Yeah.
get a number of parents who are surprised that I do not have children.
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
like, I turned 28 yesterday. Please stop.
Yeah. And I've had teachers who don't
Please.
have children who are like, well, I don't know. I'm not really a mom. So is that okay?
And I definitely like
Yeah.
cut myself off from things.
Yeah.
Like, well, I don't know. I've never been a parent, so I don't know this perspective.
Yeah.
And
All
I
right.
think I wonder about that.
We've got to line
wonder
that one
about
up then. Yeah. Perfect. So my last question is, Mike, are we wearing matching nail polish again?
I've got the snowflakes this time.
Oh, okay.
Gosh.
Oh,
Yeah.
But
we
we,
thought
we
that,
are
yeah.
color coordinated.
Yeah.
Again. That's-
Second
we
episode.
missed out, Carol. Whoops. Where's the message beforehand?
Well, you missed my Color Street nail strip party. I'm going to keep mentioning them until they sponsor the show. All right. Well,
my Color Street representative is Heather's
Micah Ogden. Well, she's a
Yeah.
knitting friend's daughter.
knitting friend's daughter.
friend's daughter.
Yes.
I love that.
Yeah. Who is out and grown up now. Okay. Well, this was great. Thank you very much. Thank you, Carol, again for the writing. Everything you do is magic.
A pleasure to meet you all.
And to Sam and Mike for being here. Also, you also came. So thanks.
Everything we do is fine.
Everything you do is
Yeah,
really
it's okay.
great.
And
Thank you.
it is not at the magic level. It is merely passable.
I have to have some boundaries with some of you. All right. Thanks everybody for coming to this episode. We'll have information about where to find the article when the podcast is out. So that will be when you're listening to it, I guess. And expect it to spark lots of conversation for folks. I hope that it will. All right. Come back again next week for another episode of That Early Childhood Nerd. Goodbye.
Bye.
Bye.